Okay, welcome back, Programming 12. We're going to make it so that we can shoot our enemies now. That's how enemies work in video games, at least this kind of video game. So what we'll do is first we're going to make a bit of a fundamental change to all of our game object classes. There's something we've neglected to do since we haven't been worrying about collisions yet. Now that we're looking at collisions, we're going to have to go and modify that game object again. And this is a typical kind of pattern. Sometimes you've thought about all the things that might affect your game object ahead of time, but sometimes as you're developing things, you realize, oh wait, I gotta upgrade my game object to support these new features. So here's an example of a feature that we haven't previously really been supporting, and that's gonna be having a field or an instance variable for size. I think that some of us like put size maybe in bullet or even hero, but it would be great if they all had sizes. So let's take a look at right now. Here's a change I'm proposing, and I'm going to do for my code, and I suggest you do as well. In GameObject, I've now added an int size. So these, whatever they are that we're making, can have sizes. So what is the size going to be? It's going to kind of depend on what the object is, right? But I want to make sure it's clear that every game object will have a size. That's going to help us a lot when we go to do collision detection. So let's take, for example, hero. So right now, hero is going to sort of have these properties. Well, now I'm going to also say it's going to have a size equal to 40. And once I do that, I can also include that in my show function. And in my bullet class, I also want to have a size function, size variable, and that's built in because it extends GameObject now. And I'm just going to set it to whatever parameter I send it so that I can choose the size of the bullet. Enemies will also have a size. I'll just choose a size, whatever size they want to be. And previously I had that built into the enemy class, but then I realized, oh, you know what? I think that would be good to put into GameObject, so everything has a size. So you're going to have to go and do that change, and that might be a little bit tricky. The most important thing to remember is that if you build it into the GameObject class, this size, then you got to make sure you don't also have it in your enemy, in your bullet, in your hero, any other thing that extends GameObject. We really shouldn't have any of those. We really shouldn't have any of those classes with an additional size because they already inherit it from GameObject. But we definitely should make use of size. We should plug it into our show functions. So for example, now I'm using size instead of putting in like 50 or whatever number I had there before. So that's an important thing to do before we do all the collisions. So you might want to just pause and go do that and make sure the project still works before continuing any further. Okay, so that's great. And of course, upgrading our game object is just a way to make sure our features don't require so much code. So we don't have to put it in all sorts of different places. We can just kind of put one size variable in one place and all these different classes get it. Once you're done that, come along with me and we'll take a look at making a shootable enemy. So this is where our act function is going to come into play. So I'm going to make an act function, and in the act function, I'll basically, I could do the movement stuff. Right now, our enemies don't move, but I can say super.act. It doesn't have any velocity, but I don't know, like maybe eventually it will have velocity. So let's say super.act just in case it wants to move. And then I can just check for collisions. So checking for collisions is going to be very similar to the to our asteroids project. We're going to have a loop, just like in the asteroid, that will search for bullets. It'll actually be simpler than in the asteroid project because we don't have to have enemies split in two, although that does sound super cool now that I say it out loud. But we would just have to have the enemy take damage. So let's do it. Let's make, first of all, the core of the loop is going to be something like this. So we'll start I at 0. I is going to be our counter. That's going to be sort of our page number as we flip through the pages of the list. And I'll say as long as I is less than my objects dot size. That's going to be how many pages there are in our list, or how many individual objects there are. Then what I'll do is I will just remember to put in the I++. That's what flips to the next page or goes to the next game object. as we are processing the list. We'll do that at the end, and in between the beginning and the end, we'll do something with the particular object that we find. So we'll get the object. So I'll make a game object variable. obj has been the name we've been using, and it'll be my objects get size get I. Yeah, there we go. So this gets out the object on page I, and of course, the rest of the mechanisms are really for just flipping the page, starting at the beginning, going to the end, going one page to the next. So this structure is probably looking fairly familiar to you. We've been using it for a lot of different things. We've been using it to draw all the things that are in the game. We've been using it to process collisions, all sorts of stuff. So this is a kind of a fundamental structure that processes all the objects. So let's use it now to detect collisions. So first of all, I only need to check collisions between bullets and the enemy. So I guess I gotta find the distance between. Well, I guess I gotta first check to see if it's a bullet. I don't think there's too many other things. I guess there can be particles. There can be other enemies. There can be heroes. So yeah, we definitely have to check to make sure object is an instance of a bullet. So if it's a bullet, what we'll do is we will compare the distance to the sum of the radii, the enemy's radii and the bullet's radii. The reason why we do that is the same math that we did back in Pong, and Breakout, Programming 11, and in the Asteroids project and other projects in Programming 12. So I won't go over that in this video, but you're always welcome to go back to old videos and take a look at why that math works. So first off, I'll make a distance variable. That'll be the distance between the bullets location and the location of the enemy, which is just location.x, location.y. So d is going to be that distance. And then I can just say, I gotta go down. So if d is less than or equal to, the distance is less than the sum of the radii, so this is my radius, size divided by 2, plus the bullet's radius. And that's great now that, there's no semicolon there, sorry. That's great that we can, just do this math. I don't have to now that size is built into the game object, I can just assume everything has a size. I don't have to worry if there's no size there or not. That was sort of a problem previously. But hey, I can do that math now. So I can say, hey, if they're, the distance is less than the sum of the radii, well, I guess we just got hit. So I'm going to start off with HP is going to be reduced by 1. Eventually, we would like to include some sort of damage concept into here, like certain weapons do different amounts of damage, but we'll take a look and see why that's going to be a bit tricky. First, we'll just see if we can do any amount of damage. That would be a nice thing. So what we'll do is, if that collision has occurred, we'll reduce the hit points by 1, and then we'll set the bullet's hit points to 0 to kill the bullet. So yeah, looks good. Oops, sorry. So there's our while loop. It's a bit of a old but new kind of thing. It's fairly similar to some of the collision code we've done in the past. Let's see how that looks. Let's go and run it. Here it comes. Dungeon crawl. Awesome. So there's our enemy. And I'm going to fire my bullet. Oh, do you see it? I got a direct hit. My bullet's flying around. I can miss it, of course. And I can hit it. So, I can shoot a bunch of bullets and it looks like it's going to slowly work its way down and die eventually. So that's good. Now, what if I wanted to add in some sort of damage? Like I wanted to do damage. So there's a couple of things you could do. One, you could, in your bullet class, you could have a field for how much damage it does, an instance variable. You can have int damage kind of built in here. That would be great. You could also use the speed of the bullet to represent the damage that you're going to do. So that either way would be interesting. Right now, speed is going to be the easier of the two. And it's a bit of a long story why that is. But I'm going to suggest just starting off with the speed of the bullet being what we use. In a future video, I'll show you what you can do with adding in some kind of damage variable. But for this video, we'll just use the speed. And so if I go back to enemy, instead of HP going down by 1, I'll say the object's velocity But of course, that's a vector. It's not a number. But I can go mag, and so I can return the magnitude, or in other words, like a number that represents the speed of how fast that bullet is moving, how many pixels per frame is it moving. So that's a little bit better. So let's see if that works. Oh, cannot convert from float to int. So this is a float, and these are ints. So yeah, oops, not going to be good. So why don't we turn that into an int, and that way it'll cut off the decimal point. So let's see if that works. So I think I have an auto pistol in my character right now. So that should do like 5 damage now each time I shoot. So let's go ahead and shoot it. Pew, pew, pew. Is it doing, I can't tell. If it's doing 5 points of damage, I'm not sure how it like got to 31. Oh, maybe its speed is rounding down. I'm not too sure what's going on there. I have to investigate. So, but it did more damage. And if I make this a sniper rifle, so that's auto pistol, let's make it a sniper rifle. That bullet moves faster, so it'll do more damage. So let's see if that concept is working. Let's go over here and let's fire. Yeah, see how I did 20 damage? Whoa, so much damage. Because it's just moving faster. So, there we have our gun now has sort of a damage component to it. So that worked out really nicely, and our enemy seems to be functioning pretty well. So great. Now, if you wanted to have sort of a separate damage concept, then, and say you have sort of int damage inside of your bullet, you're going to run into a complicated problem. So I'm going to leave this as an optional thing, but I know people have already designed their bullets to be a certain sort of damage. You even have your constructor set up to choose the amount of damage. Notice why that's a problem. If I ask about the bullet's damage, object.damage, and I run this, then, it says right here, damage cannot be resolved or is not a field. And you might be like, well, what do you mean it's not a field? I clearly made it, in bullet. I clearly have it here. And you're not wrong. It's totally correct. However, that is for bullets. And although that we have inside of, hold on a second. Even though we can clearly see we're looking at this object, we know that object is a bullet. Technically, object is not a bullet. It is a game object. I know that sounds ridiculous. It sounds so ridiculous. But notice that it matters in this case. Game objects do not have damage. And when you're looking at an object and whether it contains a particular variable or if it contains a particular function, it's the type of the object that matters, not the actual thing that is contained inside. So what do you do about it? So the thing is called downcasting. What we can do is we can make that object into a bullet, not just in terms of like what is there, but also in terms of the type of the variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast this thing to a bullet. And then it will work. Then finally you'll be able to actually take a certain amount of damage. So that would be good if for anybody who wants to sort of figure out if your bullet has a particular damage value. My code's not quite set up for that, but that will be a stumbling block that you will encounter when you are making your loop. So I would say that's the way to solve it. If you don't want to worry about that, then no problem. You can just subtract the velocity, the magnitude of the velocity, and apparently we have to turn that into an int. And I think we're having some rounding problems there, so maybe we should round it up instead of just cast it to an int, but I think it's reasonably good. So there you go, folks. Now our enemies can be shot by bullets, and I think that's going to work really nicely. And in the next video, we'll take a look at how we can make new kinds of enemies with sort of this code as their foundation. So we're going to extend enemy to make new kinds of enemies. All right, thanks everybody.